Good evening and thanks for joining us. For the first time, Turkey is joining U.S.-led airstrikes in Syria, targeting Islamic State extremists or ISIS. The Turkish government says over the last 2 days, its F-16 aircraft have attacked multiple ISIS locations less than 8 miles from Turkey's southern border with Syria. Turkey's stepped-up role follows this week's suicide bombing by ISIS that killed 32 people in the Turkish town of Suruç. Turkish forces have also attacked Kurdish militants across the border with Iraq. In addition, they have arrested nearly 600 people suspected of being ISIS or Kurdish militants. Turkey's prime minister says both military operations in Syria and Iraq will continue.
Turkey's operations will, if needed, continue until the terror organization's command centers, all locations where they plan attacks against Turkey, and all depots used to store arms to be used against Turkey are destroyed.
The U.S. and NATO have pressured Turkey for months to join the military coalition against ISIS. So what does Turkey's new military action mean? Reuters reporter Ayla Jean Yakli joins me from Istanbul to discuss that. So what was it that pushed Turkey into this fight?
Well, as you mentioned earlier this week, there was a suicide bomb attack in a town called Suruç across the border from Syria, and that sent shockwaves throughout the country. That was not the first attack by Islamic State on Turkish territory, but it was by far the most significant and the deadliest. And it had to be a factor in Turkey's decision to move closer in alliance with its ally, the United States.
Now, we talked about two sets of targets here that Turkey is focusing on ISIS and Kurdish separatists. They call them a terrorist organization. You know, one person's terrorist organization is another person's freedom fighter, right? So what's happening across that front?
The PKK, the Kurdistan Workers' Party, is also deemed a terrorist organization by the United States as well as the European Union. But the PKK, or at least forces allied with the PKK in northern Syria, have been coordinating with the United States in its campaign against Islamic State. But Turkey's never changed its stance towards the PKK. It has been involved in a peace process with the PKK, in which there's been very slow-moving talks between the two sides since late 2012. However, it still very much considers them a threat to national security.
And so what happens on the ground in Turkey with this roundup of 600 different arrests? What does that do to the Kurdish population that's there in Istanbul or other places?
Well, it very much escalates tensions and concerns. The PKK has said that the strikes last night effectively end the peace process. So there's a real fear that things could turn violent again.
So this is also on the heels of the U.S. kind of getting upgraded access to Turkish air bases along the border with Syria. There were drones flying out of it, but now U.S. fighter jets can fly. How significant is that?
As Pentagon officials have described it, it's a big deal. It effectively slashes the amount of time that these aircraft have to travel to reach their targets in Syria and Iraq. It reduces refueling missions. It's huge. It's also symbolically very important, too, to have your stalwart NATO ally, Turkey, finally fully on board in the fight against Islamic State, which the U.S. has been seeking for well over at least a year now.
All right, Ayla Jean Yakli of Reuters joining us via Skype from Istanbul. Thanks so much.
Thank you for having me.